In the variety streamer community, bad video game opinions are considered especially heinous. In the graveyard, the dedicated streamer who gives these wretched takes is known only as Kyria Thanatos. All opinions in this broadcast belong solely to the streamer. This is Post-Mortem.
Hey everybody, welcome to Post-Mortem. My name is Kyria Thanatos. This is my show where I give my video game opinions on the games that I played this week on my stream. This week, the games that I played are Yuppie Psycho, Yakuza Dead Souls, Save Room, and Eternal Darkness. And boy do I have a connecting thematic theme through all of these games. Bad boss fights. Holy shit, they all have bad boss fights. Except for Save Room. Save Room's my little baby, that one's perfect. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and get into it. Starting with Yuppie Psycho, this game was really cool. Like, really, really cool. I really enjoyed a lot of it. The premise is really cool. The idea that you're a witch hunter going into a job and it's your first day, you don't know what's going on, and suddenly you're thrust into this very important position. The world building is cool. The idea that the society is like a classless society that doesn't have very many things in it that are for people who are of a lower class. Meanwhile, the higher class gets like incredibly high paying jobs and such, and that sort of thing is obviously a reflection of capitalism and all that, but it's cooler to see it actively shown in the game and have the characters just directly say, oh yeah, I'm this class. It has a fantastic execution, it has great art, it's a really pretty game. The puzzles are really fun and interesting most of the time. It's just a really cool game until you get to the boss fights. Wow, the boss fights are terrible. In particular, there is a boss fight, I believe it is the second one, that stands out to me as being particularly pretty bad. You have to, it's called the dot matrix, and it's covering up a button. You have to get the button from it, take it to button panels, find the 3 randomized buttons, and then press 3 of them to move a block out of the way that will let you go to the exit. This is really frustrating because the area beforehand had a bunch of button-based puzzles with you moving these cubicles, these blocks of cubicles, but you didn't have to physically put a button into any of the button slots. So for a very long time at the beginning of that boss fight, I had no idea what I was doing. For an even longer time after, I would just simply die, restart, find the button, try to find the 3 random buttons, and die in the process, because it would kill you in effectively 2 hits. It was a very strong monster with a very long grab. I'm not really sure what the point behind this was, and the more I played the game, the more I started to realize maybe this should have been like a point-and-click adventure game with the awfully designed puzzle bosses, because point-and-click adventure games don't typically have bosses, so to speak. They just have maybe a guy who's like a puzzle, rather than being an actual boss that can kill you. That's not how Yuppie Psycho is. I feel like that's maybe what it should have been, though. As it stands right now, it's a top-down 2D game, and effectively in some ways it is a point-and-click adventure game. You don't ever do any combat or anything like that. But I still feel like maybe it could have been better as a point-and-click adventure game rather than what it is, or at least, at the very least, just take out the boss fights. The boss fights don't need to be as hard as they are. The first boss fight has you tripping mines so you can hurt the thing that's chasing you, and you had just learned beforehand that you can stab the mines so that you don't trip them. So for a while, I thought the only way to damage that boss was to trip the mines yourself rather than shoving a card into them, which will trip them. Again, not very lampshaded, not very clear what you're supposed to do on a lot of these bosses. The final boss that I fought before the game crashed on me and I ended up giving up on it, at least for now, is a boss that is a reflection of the witch or a manifestation of the witch, something like that. At any rate, you have to stand and shove a flashlight onto a spot so that a technician can fix the elevator. But the boss is a giant invisible teleporting enemy that when you get near it and when it hurts you, places a very big red sigil on your screen. That sigil obscures your screen completely during the moment that it is used, and you can't actually see the boss It teleports in front of you, or teleports around you, I guess I should say. And the only way to see it is to be looking directly at it when it teleports, and even then it will flash away after a few seconds. So you just kind of have to run away, kind of look forward every few steps, or look behind you every few steps to see where it is, lead it to you, hope that it's followed you all the way, then make your way back and hold the flashlight there. At the same time, the game was running terribly for me, and I can't really explain why. So it became this really frustrating problem with that boss as well. And between that boss and the crash, I just ended up giving up on it, at least until the 24-hour stream where I will finish the last like 2 hours of the game that I have. I feel really bad about giving up on it. I don't like to give up on games, especially ones that I really was in love with the first half of so much. But that's kind of been the theme of this week, is games that are really fun in the first half and games that kind of fall apart in the second half or have such terrible boss fights that they bring the game down a whole letter score. And Yuppie Psycho is no different, unfortunately. Really cool game. Really could have used a lot more polish in some of those areas, like the boss fights specifically. Speaking of bad bosses, Yakuza Dead Souls. This game is a game that I really liked, question mark? It's hard to explain. It feels like a love letter to a bunch of zombie games. Dead Rising, Left 4 Dead, Resident Evil 4, and Resident Evil 5, specifically those, but it also just kind of feels like a love letter to the genre in general. You have the kill counter from Dead Rising, you have the special infected from Left 4 Dead, all of Kiryu's section is Resident Evil 5 retold, basically, including a mounted turret section with a gigantic monster that's chasing you for some reason. And then the game controls, in my opinion, pretty similarly to Resident Evil 4, although I've been told it controls more specifically like Dead Rising, but I haven't played that yet, so I will compare notes when I get there. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the characters are kind of flanderized in a way that makes the whole experience really silly. Kiryu is so intent on not killing that he won't even kill zombies until he finally punches one and it just keeps getting back up, and he sullenly has to accept that, yes, the zombies must die. But not before making sure that anybody who insults the zombies, since they were once living people, is on his shit list. But again, boss battles in this game were the weakest part, especially the flying boss, which is the boss for Kiryu. In general, all of the bosses need you to hit a weak spot, and that's not a terrible thing. It's usually on their chest, right in the center, not too hard to hit with your guns. But the flying boss specifically requires you to shoot it out of the air in its weak spot specifically, or it will go to the roofs and start regenerating. Meanwhile, an infinite horde of zombies on the bottom is spawning that will constantly run at you and attempt to hurt you, and if you get hurt, you get pulled out of your sniper rifle shot. This sucks. I actually didn't even think I would have the ability to get past it. I did eventually, but I didn't think for a long time that I was going to even have the ability to get past it. But I did, and it didn't even take me that long. But it was really frustrating, and that's kind of the experience that I had with all of the bosses in the game. The first one that you fought with Akiyama, which is basically just a licker from Resident Evil 2, is not that difficult, but every boss after that, the big gorilla boss that you fight with Majima in a tank, the octopus boss that you fight with Ryuji Goda, the flying boss that you fight with Kiryu, all of them suck. All of them are really, really, really bad and just not fun to fight at all. And it's a shame because I really liked this game, but I guess I didn't like its story either, because it's just not there. Now, Yakuza games kind of have a meme of all coming together in the end for the big reveal where you go like, oh, no way, right? But the story is it's just not there in Yakuza Dead Souls. Most of the time you spend fighting zombies and attempting to help survivors, attempting to pull everybody out of the increasingly overrun parts of Kamurocho, but there really isn't a story past that. You just kind of keep fighting the zombies, and then at the very end it's revealed, oh, the Omi Alliance did this to hurt the Tojo clan. That's right, they released a zombie virus to hurt the Tojo clan, who was made by a questionably transgender person, at the very least maybe a gay stereotype, named DD. That's it, that's the story. At the end, nothing is solved, everybody who is a zombie just gets killed, and then life goes back to normal. There is no cure. Millions are dead. Well, probably thousands. But it's very silly. At the end of the story, it's just you fight a big Resident Evil 5 monster on top of a building. Kiryu shoots it with a rocket launcher even. And then that's it. And then it's over. They show a cutscene of the military shooting one of the last zombies, and life goes back to normal. And it's like, this was a terrible event where millions died, and that's it? You guys just don't care? At the very least, I alone, between the 4 protagonists, killed 2,000 people. That's a huge amount, and that's just me. You can't tell me that, like, a lot more didn't die due to the military intervention or other survivors, and we're just going to pretend that's normal and just go back to... Well, actually, you know what? It is 2022. Okay, moving on. So thankfully, beating Yakuza Dead Souls did give me enough time to play a game called Save Room, which was a bonus game that I had been saving up for this Midnight Massacre. Save Room is this incredibly clever little puzzle game, and I don't have that much to say about it. It's got 40 levels. It is essentially, what if we took the mechanic from RE4, where you play inventory Tetris with your briefcase, and then we turned it into a puzzle game. It's really fun. It's perfect. I have no complaints about this game. It is the perfect length of time to play. It takes an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how good / bad you are at the puzzles. It has a lot of incredibly clever little mechanics, like there's a healing mechanic where you have a health bar in the top corner and you have to eat things or create heals out of herbs, just like in Resident Evil, with the same color combinations to heal yourself, and that makes you okay. You have to combine powders into ammos and then fill your gun up with those ammos, because you can't leave a level either not fully healed or with any of your guns not having ammo in them. So you have 3 different types of powders, you have different types of herbs, you have some items that are poisoned, like a rotten egg or rotten fish that you can eat to hurt yourself to then be able to heal yourself to free up inventory space. And it becomes this sort of secondary order of operations puzzle on top of the inventory Tetris, and it's really fun. It's really clever. The only complaint I have about this game is that there's not more levels, and I hope that they release a DLC for this game to add more levels, because I would buy it in a heartbeat. Fantastic little game, enjoyed every minute of it. It's full of Resident Evil fluff. It's just long enough to not overstay its welcome or to make the gimmick feel like it's starting to lose its relevancy at all. Really, really good game. Could not get enough of it. Really want more. If you haven't played Save Room, if there's anything you take from this video, go play Save Room. I cannot recommend it enough. If you haven't played it, go play Save Room. It's fantastic. And with that, we lead into the final game I played this week, Eternal Darkness. This game is probably not as good as you remember it. Now, I want to be clear. This game is incredible. It's like a 9 out of 10. Easy. This game is really, really good. There's a lot that I really like about it. And I think the most important thing that I feel this game gets across is that when you play the Resident Evil games, they're kind of asking a question inherently by their own design, which is, how do we take a point and click adventure game and we turn it into a 3D survival horror game? How do we do that? How do we take a game series that is known for being obtuse and puzzly and silly and all these sorts of things, all these aha moments that you really like? How do we take that and we turn it into a 3D survival horror game? And in this case, I'm talking specifically about the original Resident Evil. The Resident Evils, as they went on, became more of a survival horror shooter game. The original Resident Evil is very point and clicky. So the first half of Eternal Darkness is incredible, and I'm saying that very clearly. The first half is incredible. And there are some things in the game that just are good the whole way through. All of the sanity effects are cool. Everybody talks about the sanity effects in this game. Everybody remembers the sanity effects in this game. They're cool. You're right to do so. The sanity effects still hold up. Even the ones that don't hold up time-wise, like turning down the volume on a CRT or the video cable going out and making it look like your game messed up, All of that stuff is great. It's fantastic. It's a nice little reminder about CRTs and how, how we used to live, how game consoles used to work, etc., etc. All of that stuff is cool. There's a lot of video gamey effects too, like walking into a room transition and then it not doing anything. Or one that I had happen where I went into a room and went down the stairs, and as I went down the stairs, I just kept going down out of the level geometry. It was really cool. There's a lot of really video gamey effects like that. Walking into a room full of guys and they all immediately kill you, etc. Your inventory being empty, that sort of stuff. It's really cool. There's a lot of really cool sanity effects. And it's very clear to me that this game was an inspiration to a lot of people. This game feels like a huge inspiration to like Assassin's Creed, feels like a huge inspiration to Dead Space. I mean, the little guys are just necromorphs. There's a limb targeting system. It feels like it's been an inspiration to a lot of games, and for that I really respect it. I love to see the roots of games and where they came from. It also has, a really cool spell system where you get runes and you get power sigils and that sort of thing, and you have to combine them and figure out the spells yourself. And if you're smart, you can figure out almost all of the spells ahead of time as soon as you get the runes for them. You don't have to have a paper telling you how to do them or what's in them. You can even cast them without knowing what they do and mentally memorize the effects to figure out, oh, this spell does this spell does that. It's really cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff in the game like that. The time traveling mechanic through the pages of the Book of the Eternal Darkness. It's really cool. The branching pathways for each god. It's all really cool. There's so many really interesting and good ideas in Eternal Darkness that it is genuinely upsetting that the latter half falls off so bad. The puzzles start to get adventure game, puzzle point and click game logic-y, where they stop being lampshaded to you and stop being anywhere near as clear and become pretty obtuse. For example, there's a puzzle when you're playing as the inspector, I don't remember his name, where you have to summon a zombie, which you get earlier in the level as a spell, and you have to make it walk into a crusher block, and when that crusher block crushes it, it will open a door. Now it shows you a cutscene of a zombie getting crushed beforehand, but when that zombie gets crushed, it shows the door locking. Now, maybe I'm just stupid, but I didn't connect any dots there. All that told me was that that is a place that will kill you if you go under it, so don't go under it. It did not seem as though the locking of the door and the crusher killing a zombie were in any ways connected. And even if I did think they were connected, I wouldn't think the solution is to just take another zombie under there and this time it won't go back up after it smushes it for some reason. There's a lot of puzzles like that. As the game goes on, the puzzles get harder, which is not necessarily a problem, but they begin to get frustratingly hard, to the point that I can't say that I was having a lot of fun with them. And then we get to the boss fight with the Guardian when you're playing as the soldier. I don't think I've ever had a boss fight that's upset me more in a video game. It's pointless. It's really pointless. The game's combat is not its strong suit, and here it goes and gives you a combat puzzle boss, where it's only vulnerable during certain points, but those points where it's vulnerable can actually be interrupted by getting too close to it, and thus you can miss your windows of opportunity to hurt it and damage it. Also, you have to use a spell to damage it, and that's the only thing that can. But you have to make sure that the ads that it summons are alive, or that also makes you lose your window of opportunity to damage it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I spent 45 minutes on this boss. 45 actual honest to God minutes on this boss, going through all of my resources, having to load a save state, then go back and do it again, and still take a good like 15 minutes to beat this boss. Ridiculous. The game does not need combat bosses. It doesn't need combat puzzles. The combat isn't very good to begin with. It's interesting. The limb mechanic is interesting. Being able to take the limbs off of your enemies to stop them, like if you take the arms off of your enemies, then they can't hurt you anymore. That sort of stuff is interesting, but it doesn't mean that it needs that sort of stuff. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Also, the gimmick of a bunch of different playable protagonists really starts to wear thin towards the end because it becomes a twofold problem. It's really cool, but I never feel too much of a connection to any of the characters because I don't spend more than an hour or so with them unless I'm fighting a big stupid blue testicle boss. Which means our main character, Alex, I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about her. I never get a chance to learn about her because The game is constantly shifting my perspective to somebody else. All I really know about her is that she is the heir to the Roivot's throne or mansion or whatever, and she is the person who reads the pages, and maybe she'll be the final character in the final chapter, probably, but that still doesn't mean I feel like I have any connection to her, which is a shame, because I really want to like her. She seems interesting. She's voiced by Laura Bailey, doing a Laura Bailey voice. She seems cool. I want to like her, but how can I when the game doesn't give me any opportunity to do so? And while I do like the idea that each page teaches you something, and the mansion that Alex is in is sort of this over-encompassing puzzle that you have to use the pages and what you learned from them to go do things in, ultimately it starts to wear a little thin in that regard as well, because it makes the mansion feel more like it's being artificially gated than it is actually a big puzzle. And all of this is just so frustrating, because I wanted to like this game, and in a lot of respects I do still like this game. There's a lot of really interesting ideas in it, and there's a lot of stuff that makes it very clear why people love this game so much, but it just maybe didn't age well as people wanted it to have, and that really bums me out. At the very least, I have to ask myself, how many people who remember this game very fondly from their childhood actually beat this game? And if they did beat this game, how many did it without a guide? Because at the end of the day, if you have to have a guide to beat a puzzle game, it's not a very good puzzle game. Puzzle games rely on their aha moments, where you realize that you've done something really cool and you've solved the puzzle in a really smart way. If a puzzle game doesn't have those moments, it's just not a very good puzzle game. And that's half of what that game is a puzzle game. But anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this post-mortem. I had a lot of fun making it. These are starting to feel a lot more comfortable for me. I'm stammering less and saying uhs and other filler words less, and they're becoming easier to edit too. So I really hope you enjoyed, and if you have any comments on my opinions here, if you agree with them, if you disagree with them, whatever, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out. I will see you next Sunday for another post-mortem. Bye!